Vanessa Bogenholm, welcome to the Big Fat Life podcast.
Thanks, Daniel. Very happy to be here.
Excited to have you here because not only are you a personal trainer and you've helped a lot of people, and we're going to get into all that. You've written a book now talking about your life, your background, what your understanding is about obesity from your own experience and through your clients. Right off the top, why do you think we have such an obesity problem, not just in this country, in the world? I mean, we're an obese people.
Yes, we are. And there's a lot of reasons. We don't do physical labor as much. We sit at our desks a lot more. We have very little time, so we don't actually, I'm sorry, my dogs are running around like wild Indians hearing your voice. So my belief is that we really have changed our lifestyles. And this is where we've come to, right? And the next thing is we're trying to fix ourselves mentally. And I think one of the big things missing is that food is comfort. And we've decided in American society and Indian society and Chinese society that everything we do with our families and our holidays is food. Birthday cake, Thanksgiving, we have turkey, Christmas, we have ham, Jewish holidays, it's all about the food. Life is not about food. I mean, and that's where we've become now. It's just, it's all these things put together. And then of course, we have this image of ourselves and we try to shove food in our mouth to make ourselves feel better. And then all of a sudden we now are overweight and we seem to be stuck in a cycle.
Feel better because we're not actually becoming what we can envision ourselves as being, right?
Yes, Daniel, I think this is such an interesting thing about what somebody wants to do in life and be in life and where they want to go. And, sometimes we just are running from point A to point B and not even taking time to contemplate. We don't talk about mental illness enough at all. Everybody gets depressed. Everybody's anxious. Nobody thinks they're perfect. And every time that somebody actually admits it, whether it be a movie star or an athlete, 45% of the people will go, oh, that's great. Then the other 65 will say what? Oh gosh, what an idiot. They're weak. They're whatever. We don't want to prove weakness, right? That is a huge portion of our society.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, with you and your personal story, you talk. I laughed when I read your book. There was one moment. You're an overweight child. You were, you describe yourself as an obese child, and you mentioned kind of just accepting that. That's just who you were. You used the classic line, "I'm big boned," right? And
yes,
that and the part that got me, you talked about how you would go shopping at Sears and you couldn't fit into girls' clothes, so your mom would take you to like the husky boys section. And I'm like, I used to shop at the husky boys section. I remember what that was like. I used to go to the local department store and it was like, okay, here we go, husky. And in my mind, I'm like, that just sounds good, right? Like you want to be this husky like animal, like, but it was awful. And your friends are all like small, wearing like normal kids clothes, and you're seeing advertisements for all these like kids clothes, and that's not where you shop because you can't.
no.
And that's the kind of stuff that kind of enters your mind, that you're different and that difference is sometimes negative. Why don't you tell us about a little summary about your upbringing and how you discovered that you were fat and how that affected you mentally?
And it's so interesting that you say this because how I discovered I was fat is a thought process I have every day of my life at 55 years old, at a very fit person. So, I was 10 years old. I'd been, like you said, I wear 18 Husky at 10 years old. This is just not a normal 10-year-old child, right? I was last picked on every softball team, on the school playgrounds, whatever. No kids wanted to play with me. And my mother would pack my lunch and she would freeze a Coke every day and put it in aluminum foil to put in my lunch to keep it cold. And the pretty girls who I wanted to hang out with, because we all know those pretty groups in our schools. And the one girl said to me, drinking that Coke every day is why you're fat. And it was like if you said I was a Martian. Like I had no clue because my parents were fat. My brother was fat. Well, I don't know. We're all like this. And so I just didn't think much of it. And then, she said the magic thing was you can eat your lunch with us, but you can't play with us. And, I have a poster in my office that says this because this is the phrase that really changed my life. I realized because I was fat that nobody wanted to play with me. And I went off on my own. Now, this was, and for the rest of my life, this phrase, this one girl said to me, has haunted me. And now my 10-year-old brain didn't say, well, Vanessa, maybe you should lose a bunch of weight and everyone will like you, because that's not the way a 10-year-old brain works. I did the opposite. I used candy to fix me because candy made me feel better. I loved sugar. And I learned to be by myself, right? That's what we do. We isolate in our sadness.
That's a big part of this for so many of us is we have those moments in life, especially when we don't know any better or if we're not educated on the subject when it comes to obesity and health, that food we discover very easily gives us some kind of comfort. When the world is not
Yes.
giving that to you, food will do that, at least temporarily. You know, you get that sugar
Yes.
fix and you're like, "Ooh, I feel good, serotonin and all this stuff is going well." And then the crash comes and then you still are in the same place, only that now you've consumed excess calories and you feel terrible about yourself. Now, what's amazing to me is even though there's a lot of layers to your story because it seems
Mhm.
like you got some good advice from a priest at one point and
Mhm.
you had to go through some trials and tribulations to kind of figure it out on your own,
Mhm.
and you end up pushing yourself to I'm going to run. That I'm going to
Yes.
do something. I'm going to run. That's a big step in my mind. It's a big step to get off the couch and suddenly not just do it, but you were very motivated. You were going into it like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to run and things are going to be awesome. And like you had given yourself this drive. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how that came about and how that
Sure.
ended up for you?
So when I was this summer before high school, I lived in a basketball town where everybody played basketball, and my mother was hoping that I would play basketball. So I'd go to this camp for kids coming into high school. And I obviously can't jump off the ground. I'm 200 pounds. I'm 13 years old. And the coach was fantastic, super nice. And he just says, you know, Vanessa, you probably want to get fit before high school starts. And Frank Shorter, who was a very famous runner in the 1970s, this man was my hero. And he was not my hero because he was such an amazing athlete and such an amazing runner. He was my hero because he had character. So, you know, he had the medal taken away from, didn't get to compete in the 1980. In 1976, he had, you know, somebody run in front of him as a cheater. Like this guy still ran 140 miles a week when he had his due glory taken away again and again and again. So I wanted to run like Frank Shorter. That was my thing. And, you know, and I figured, wow, I'm such a hard worker. I was already working full time as a 13-year-old. I can do this. So I go buy the shoes, I get ready in the morning, I do everything, and I go out and I run 23 steps.
It's a
And I
big
sit
number
on the
for you.
corner, sit on the corner and I cry, right? And underneath a street lamp, you know, at 5 o'clock in the morning. Because now I realize that I'm the fat girl and that nobody likes me and that I'm a loser. And I quit at everything. And I had never had that realization before. So as I'm walking home dejected, I just think, what if I did one more step? If I can run 23 steps, why can't I run 24? So I ran 26. And that became my running journey and my path to becoming a marathoner way before women ran. You have to imagine this is 1980. Women did not run. They were still telling us our uteruses would fall out. We didn't even have the marathon for women in the Olympics until 1984. So as a right now, you can go outside and you're going to see 20 or 30 women running down the street, right?
Right, sure.
At a regular race, you see half women and half men. But back then, it was less than 5%. And it was very odd, especially for a young, overweight person to be out running. And everybody was very, very supportive of me. And it changed my life because it showed me I could do things I never thought were possible.
It's one of the most motivational stories in your book, in my opinion, because
Mhm.
what I feel like you did, and it's something that we all have to try to tap into, is even though you were thinking you were mentally ready to tackle this goal that you set for yourself and
Mhm.
only you, which I think is
Mhm.
important. You had a, you know, a
Mhm.
very personal relationship with this is what I'm going to do for me. You had physical limitations, right? Like right away,
Yes.
23 steps, and suddenly your body is like, I can't do this anymore. And it's tapping into that. Now you got to go into your, part mental, big part of it is the mental
Mhm,
part, and just like digging deep and thinking, what can I push myself to? Because a lot of us can do things and then we
mhm,
feel the burning, we feel
mhm,
the exhaustion, we feel our lungs just like expanding very quickly. And we think, okay, we're done. But when you tap into that well of, I'm going to push harder, I'm going to go a
mhm.
little bit faster, I'm going to go a little bit further. I think that that's where, if we do that, if we find that and we actually push through that, we learn that there's so much more potential. And I think that's what you tapped into. That's how I took it. And
Mhm.
that's a big moment for a lot of people, because when you start to prove to yourself that you're more than what you thought or more than what you
Right.
feel, suddenly the possibilities become endless.
And the possibilities became so endless that I went from a C student to an A student. And I didn't just work now full time. I became an assistant manager of a shoe store at 14 years old. I buy my parents a house. Like this just opened up a whole new world. I mean, I thought I was a loser and I was always going to be a loser. So I didn't want to try anything. And because I realized I could push my body a little further, it changed my life. And just like every human being, I know I do businesses, they do well, they fail. I do relationships, they do well, they fail. But I think what running did for me and getting that weight off was it changed my perspective, which showed me that, yeah, you can try and fail. Oh, well, then you move on and you keep trying, right? You don't just roll over and play dead, which is what I had done as a child with food. Because if you said I was fat, I was ugly, you were a boy in the playground who threw that dodgeball at me, I just crawled in my hole with my candy and cried, right? And now I don't do that. Now I say, okay, well, that didn't work out. Let's figure out what was wrong and let's move forward.
Yeah, it's an important lesson that you taught yourself. And yeah, you had that drive. Not many, I don't know if any 14-year-olds are buying houses for their family. So, obviously your work ethic was there. I like how you, and I don't want to give away too many details of the book. People need to read this book.
Mhm.
But I really like that conversation you had with a priest, because
Uh,
just to sum it up, you were angry because you were praying for
mhm.
something and it wasn't happening. And that
Yeah,
priest sort of set you straight. Can you tell us a little bit about what he said to you?
sure. So I grew up in a quasi Catholic family. It's the only way I could say it. It was the Catholic family who didn't necessarily do everything, but talked about it a lot and about the principles. And so I was the loser. I was the fat kid, and everyone had horses in my town. I was horrifying at it. So my father told me to go to church. I went to Catholic grade school and do a novena, which is basically praying for an hour every day to Stations of the Cross. And I did this for 30 days and go to my horse show, and I'm more of a fool and lose more than ever. And so I'm crying and I'm upset at God because obviously it's God's fault because I prayed and he didn't listen. And I go into this church and I'm throwing things and, it's a big fiasco. And the priest says to me, what the hell were you doing in this church praying every afternoon instead of working that damn horse? How is that horse going to get any better if what you're doing is keep praying here? When you do everything to the best of your ability, that's the best prayer to God you could ever do.
Yeah.
And it was this like, what? Like, I thought people just, prayed and the things that happened. Instead, I realized that taking care of my body, taking care of myself mentally, keeping my house clean, all of that kind of stuff makes me feel better and achieve things and not just wish. So often people talk about what they want and aren't willing to actually do the work.
Yeah, that's why I thought that was such a valuable story, because it applies to everything. And when we're
Mhm.
talking about obesity and weight loss, it applies to that as well. Thinking about it, wishing it, hoping,
Yep.
but no action will lead to no result, right?
Right.
And so that was an amazing moment, I think, for you. Things really took off for you. And here's where we get into, I mean, you've run marathons now. Did you win a marathon? Did I read that
Yes,
correctly?
I did. I did at the age of 16.
which
Yes.
which is mind blowing, right? Just the idea. I think you meet someone right now that runs a marathon and you're just like,
Uh-huh.
holy smokes, you did it, but you won it. So you're proving to
Yeah.
yourself your successes. At what point in life do you decide, all right, you got yourself healthy, You're doing
Uh-huh.
things, to
Mhm.
make your life better. You've kind of learned some lessons. Where does that transition to, I want to work with other people, I want to help other people?
Well, it's such a funny thing because it wasn't a plan. I had other careers, and then I got to a place in my life where I wasn't happy with my career and I had just stopped. And I was looking for my next big thing, whatever I was going to be. And, this friend of mine said, "Hey, since you're not working, why don't you help my sister lose some weight?" And I said, "Why would I do that?" I had no respect for personal trainers. I would go into a gym and I would say they know nothing about a human body. They don't know how to help somebody eat properly. I had no respect for them and I would laugh at personal trainers, obviously, all the time. So my friend says to me, "You're the fittest person I've ever known. Do that jumping around the park thing you do with her. Just help her lose weight. She's like 100 pounds overweight." And that literally started off me becoming a personal trainer, period. And I think that because I was obese, I get it. I get that mental sadness that obesity causes. I get the physical limitations. I mean, so often someone comes to me and they say, "I'm never going to be okay," which is such a sad thing that they think that they have done this damage to their body and that they never can run a marathon or look hot in that black dress or be able to get up out of a chair comfortably. And they just give up. And I just know that give up feeling. So you don't have to try for an hour a day. You don't have to work out for an hour a day. You don't have to, I don't know, be making your, perfect vegetable dinner every night. All you got to do is say, "Okay, this moment, I'm going to walk for 3 minutes. I'm not even going to do very much. I'm just going to get up and walk for 3 minutes and allow myself to do that." And a lot of times that 2 or 3 minutes or whatever your time frame is will change your mental attitude enough that you don't give up. And giving up is such an awful thing. And we all do it and we all feel bad about it. So try to do something else before you give up.
Yeah, it's that important lesson that you learned as a young girl, right? It was 23
Mhm.
steps. Why can't I do 24? It's the same principle, because
Yeah,
it's about,
right.
what are your limitations? Let's try to go one step past it just to prove to yourself. It
Sure.
is a mental game and it's an important one. The thing, when you meet people and you work with people who are obese, I know you deal with a lot of different, or an array of problems that they're facing, whether it's
Mhm.
whatever weight or physical condition they're in. But when it comes to the mental part, one of the things that you mentioned is making an emotional commitment, right? To
Mhm.
becoming the best person they can be, their best self.
Yep.
What exactly, what does that mean? What does that look like?
So when I meet somebody, I have to figure out a trigger. So if you're wanting to play with your kids and you don't feel comfortable, if that's your thing, if you want to be able to go golf with your male friends and you really can't swing the golf club very well, whatever that thing is that you really want to do, I have to find that out as soon as possible because that's going to be your goal. Right? Now, your goal is going to change through your life again and again and again. And I've had clients for 10 years and their goals change. But I got to find that out. And that's what we're working toward, right? So I'm not saying to you, "Hey, I'm looking at you and we got to lose 80 pounds and you got to be able to do this." I could care less. And in fact, how much weight you need to lose, which may be something that I internally know or it's in my notes, not something I really share with you because it doesn't matter. What matters is we're moving forward into what your goal is. And it's always about your goal. So I have a fantastic guy, Chinese guy. He's super fun because his goal was to get dates. And it was fantastic, right? "Vanessa, look at me. I'm a loser." And I was like, "All right, 25 years old, you got a master's degree in computer science, you make 300K a year, you're driving a Lexus. Doesn't say loser to me." And he goes, "Would you date me?" And I go, "Oh, I know what you need. I got it. No problem. We're on a path." Right? A little bicep on the guy. Guy's been on 7 dates in the last 2 months. I mean, it's hysterical. And he walks in and he's all happy. But I had to find that. He didn't just walk in as an overweight person and I said, "Oh, we got to lose weight." Because that's not what this is about. This is about you feeling healthy in your skin to do the things in life you want to. Obesity stops that for us.
Yeah. I, I, I wonder, speaking of, like, in your experience dealing with so many people,
Mhm.
I mean, you have stories in the book about it too, and I mean, you have clients talk about clients that have succeeded and failed.
Yeah.
You ask them questions, you're trying to work with them. They start the process with you. They even put a little trust in you, and then they just stop. Sometimes they just
Yes.
quit. What do you think is happening that they mentally just stop, or they don't believe, even if they're starting to succeed a little bit, that they just can't do this?
Well, I don't know how you are when you look in the mirror, but so often we look in the mirror and we still see that fat person. And this is such a common thing. They don't actually even believe in the weight loss. They just don't. They're just mentally so stuck in, this is the person I am. I'm obese. I'm going to be obese. I'm never going to get to do these things. And that brain power takes over. And it's very hard for people to understand, how can someone lose 40 or 50 pounds and quit? Why did they all of a sudden think it was so hard? And it's a mental thing. It's a mental game. So if you hurt your, right now, if you stub your toe getting up from your desk, your brain is going to remember that pain. Anytime you get near that desk, you're going to kind of go around it a little bit so you don't hurt yourself again. Anyone who's had a knee injury or hip injury, even when you know it doesn't hurt, your brain tells you it hurts. Our brain tells us we're still fat and unable to do things. And it's a huge daily chore to realize you're not that person anymore. And I've never met an obese person who didn't think of themselves as overweight still. And it's the same with anorexics. They're the same thing. They always think of themselves as unhealthy and too thin. So we have to override the brain pattern. Difficult.
Yeah, and it's difficult to have that confidence in yourself where you've probably been putting yourself down for so long. That's
Right.
one of those things about being kinder to yourself. I think
Yeah.
that we train our bodies, right? We train our
Mm-hmm.
muscles, we're training ourselves, and it's a push further, but you have to train yourself mentally to accept that you're doing something good and positive, that you are changing. And that isn't always easy, because that's the thing you don't see. You can see yourself in the
Right.
mirror, but mentally you're not seeing that transition. And I think that a big indicator is how we speak about ourselves. Now, when you're dealing with clients and you're talking about these different ailments and their brain is telling them, oh, you have that knee injury and you're never going to be able to do this thing, what do you do to try to get clients over that threshold?
Well, it's so interesting because for whatever reason, our brains remember negativity and not positivity.
Yeah,
So when
why
people
is
feel
that?
that there's, I don't know, but we don't, I mean, I don't, everything in life, right? But so I keep a full ledger of everyone's workouts, and I have, stuff that you do when you're not with me. And so when someone says, oh, my weight is stuck, and I'll pull out this and go, hey, but look at this. 3 months ago, you were 240 and now we're 214. So where are we stuck? Right. And so when I take, everyone needs to know that they're succeeding. So let's say a lot of guys' goals, it's very funny. We want to bench 200 pounds, right? I love this. They have no idea how hard that really, really is, which is super funny when a guy comes here and I say, we're going to start at like 80 and it's going to hurt. And they go, but like people bench 200 all the time. And I go, well, I do, but you can't. I mean, so we go up and someone will say, I had a guy do 140 for the first time yesterday, right? Huge. And he goes, wow, what did I start at? And I go, okay, let's look it up. Wow, you started at 50 pounds. And he was like, oh God, that's embarrassing. I mean, really? And he was like in shock, right? Or getting people to do chin-ups, or, everybody in my studio eventually gets to do full chin-ups. That's crazy,
It's
right?
hard. It's hard.
And I tell people all the time, even a fit guy will come in and I'll go, you're gonna be able to do chin-ups. It's gonna take us about 2 years. But you're gonna be that guy that pulls up to the like liquor store or to the gas station and sees a pole and can pull himself up and look really cool, because everyone's gonna go, wow. And he goes, Vanessa, I can't even hold myself for 5 seconds on it. Doesn't matter. It's our start, right? You hold for 5, all of a sudden we're holding for 45, and all of a sudden you can do a chin up. And it's really hysterical to watch these guys go to the park and do them all the time now, because that's the cool guy, right? Let's be
Mhm.
that. Got to get there. And so take notes where you are, where you're going to.
Yeah, and it takes patience, and that's one of the things that a lot of us lack. We want instant success, and we don't get that because that's not realistic. How do you tamper people's expectations? Because I know you've had clients that come in there and they're like, I need to lose 30 pounds in 2 months. I just need to get that done. And that's my goal. And you're like, easy. Like, how do you get them to shift focus? Because if they don't, I don't know if they would succeed.
So I don't. I tell them no. I just tell them no, it's not going to happen. I am blunt. When someone comes to me like that and says, famous. Women will come in. I have a wedding to go to in 6 months. I need to lose 60 pounds. I go, well, good luck with that. I don't know what to say to you. I mean, it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. I'm really realistic. If someone comes to me and says, a woman pulled up at the end of my day, I do 10 to 12 clients a day sometimes. She pulls up at the end of my day and she says, hi, I called you. You had no room in the schedule. I really need to lose this 100 pounds. And I'd like to do it in the next year. And I go, it'll take 4. I mean, and she was like, and I go, it takes 4 years to lose 100 pounds successfully. If that doesn't work for you, why are you talking to me? I am honest. This is not a quick fix. This is a change of lifestyle that will take a long time. Habits do not start overnight, right?
Right.
Average is 10,000. Ready for this? 10,000 hours to learn your sport really well. How would you possibly learn to eat well and exercise and sleep and do all the things you need to do to take care of this body if you haven't done it for 20, 30, or 40 years? Right?
And a lot of that problem is, I think there's a lot of what I call noise out there because there's all this different types of information. And someone could come to you and say, I want to lose, 100 pounds in a year. And you're like, good luck with that. And in the back of their mind, they're like, well, I saw so-and-so lose 100 pounds doing this diet. I know my friend or my friend's sister lost 80 pounds in 6 months. Why can't I lose 100 pounds? Are you not good at what you do? And it's, I think the key word there is about a sustainable weight loss, because that's really why we should be here. And I think it's the lie that we tell to ourselves. A lot of us say, oh, I know how to do this. I'm just going to do it. I'll cut my calories down. I'm going to eat this diet, eat that diet like my friend did. I can lose the weight and then I'll keep it off. And you're right. It's like you haven't trained yourself to get there. A lot of your clients lie. They lie to themselves mostly. I mean, they're lying to you, but you realize they're really lying to themselves. How do you handle that? How do you get them to maybe get to the truth of the problem? Because that has to be difficult at times.
I think, it was interesting. The other day, a client came in and he asked me a funny question. He says, how many clients cry in here? And I go, every one of them. I mean, it was just one of those interesting moments. So we lie to ourselves to cope. It's our coping mechanism as human beings. And guess what? I don't confront it. I don't care. It doesn't bug me in the least bit, because I hope that we'll get to a place of security that you're not lying anymore. We all have depression. We're all sad. Nobody's perfect. And there's such a release in crying about it. There really is, and saying, okay, this is who I am and I'm not happy about it, right? And I don't know how to change. And that we can now move forward. But no,
right.
We all lie. We just gotta let it go.
What are some examples of lies you've encountered that are maybe common?
Well, so food issues are hysterical, right? And I think that, I don't eat processed food, and it's a big part of our American diet to take things out of boxes and eat them. And it's horrifying, right? I've had people say that all they eat is vegetables and they don't understand why they're fat when they literally had potato chip crumbs in front of them, right? I had this guy, couldn't figure out why he wasn't losing weight. He had this food journal, like he was exercising. And then, whoa, 8 cappuccinos a day. 8
a day. A lot of sugar.
It's a lot of sugar and milk. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what? How did I miss this? So, because that didn't seem to be an important part to put on his food journal. And so you have to figure out what that is. He didn't intentionally mean to lie to me for 6 months, right? And he just was like, why am I not losing weight when I've cut all these calories? I had to do 1,100 calories a day, and I was like perplexed. Famous things, alcohol. Alcohol is such a great thing. I love to drink myself, but guess what? The calories are so high. So if you're going to drink 3 or 4 margaritas a night, you can't lose weight. My only unsuccessful client was this one woman who basically would say, I didn't eat dinner, Vanessa. I just went out for a couple of drinks. And I'd go, what's a couple of drinks? Well, maybe 3 or 4 margaritas. Well, that was your whole day's calories in a couple of drinks, right? And she was the only client that literally gained weight with me. But she didn't want to tackle that. That to her was her lifestyle. So I said, well, then it's not going to work for us. I don't want you to spend money on me. I don't want you to be unhappy. If that's what you want to do in life, you're not going to lose that hard fat. And so we see women now. I think it's very interesting. We didn't used to see women with that hard, that hard belly fat. Sorry, my dogs are always
It's all
crazy
good.
when I'm doing a podcast.
Well, you need your dogs around.
Um,
Your dogs bring you peace of mind. So I understand.
yes, they do. So, but that hard belly fat that women have now, we didn't used to see that. We used to see it on men and call it beer belly, but I see it very commonly in women now. And it's so hard for your heart to actually get blood through that. It's so dangerous. It's why we see women having heart attacks and strokes in their 50s, besides the fact that they're so uncomfortable in their bodies, right? That's not a look that any woman wants. And I really think it has to do with the fact that women drink a lot of alcohol now and they're sedentary. But yeah,
More than they used to.
alcohol's more than they used to be, right?
Right.
Rather than they used to be. So it's tough, but we have
And
to
you
be
even
honest.
mentioned about making some concessions, like you don't ask your clients to give up everything,
Oh
but
God, no.
sometimes you like you mentioned the margarita and you
Mm,
mentioned how you like to have cocktails too. So
mhm,
sometimes it's not giving it up entirely, but it is maybe cutting down some of that if it's excess
mhm,
and
mhm.
changing it up. Like instead of a margarita that's loaded with sugar, you say, how about a tequila with some lime juice? It's not as sweet, but it'll kind of give you what you want without going crazy and exceeding calories. So it's not always just omission. It's sometimes adjusting and changing things up. How do you approach that? Because I'm sure people, you work them out. You even mentioned in your book at one point, someone said to you, okay, so now what's my diet? Because everybody is worried. Like, what am I going to
Yes.
have to give up now? Like, what is the thing I can't do anymore? How do you approach that nutrition?
So I approach what is your lifestyle like? If you're an Italian person who every Sunday we have pasta at mom's house for dinner, fantastic. We are not changing that in the least bit. That is what's important to your life. We're going to work to how do we get there. So if that's the one night you're going to have pasta, the other 6 nights you're not going to have it, right? But if I want you to have a social life that you love. So I drink, I meet my friends for drinks. I probably don't drink margaritas because they're too much sugar, right? So I'll drink something else instead. Just a little bit of vodka on ice with a lime, fantastic. That's all I need. And then I'm only having like 100 calories and it's not a big deal. So we just change it up. So if you're always going somewhere and people are having birthday cake, it is really okay to say no, which is so interesting to me. I mean, people that I go out with will always say, "Oh, we have this, but you probably don't want any." And I say, "You're right, thanks." And it's okay. No one's judging me. No one's like saying, "Oh God, she's trying to be one of those people," right? Nobody is. And in fact, I went to a dinner party on Sunday and the people were more than gracious knowing that I eat this really healthy lifestyle. So they had grilled vegetables, salmon and shrimp, but they had teriyaki sauce and rice on the side that people could add if they wanted that, knowing that I wouldn't eat that. And I thought, wow, that is so polite, which also caused a dinner party of 10 people a great conversation about food. And people that didn't know me go, God, this is how you eat all the time, right? And I go, this is exactly how I eat all the time. It's protein and grilled vegetables with basically no calories and ice water when I have food. And so I don't have the alcohol with the food, which also creates that differentiation, which can work for some people and not for others. Works for me. Otherwise, if I'm using that liquid to get my food down, then I'll drink more wine, right? Better to have that wine right before and then right after, and with the food, actually drink water. So
Right.
all those kinds of things are just little tricks to get you to be social and still enjoy your stuff.
But you don't apply like your understanding is one size does not fit all. So
No.
when you talk to a client and you go look at their
Mhm.
lifestyle, you're not telling them protein, grilled vegetables, cut out everything else. It's about what adjusting to what they need maybe and adjusting how they eat, taking out some of the stuff obviously that is causing
Mhm.
them their obesity.
Mhm.
How do you figure that out? Because some people, you mentioned about, do you need to eat breakfast? Some people do,
Mhm.
but not everyone. And I'm one of those, like I don't eat breakfast. I don't need to. I don't
Right.
feel hungry when I wake up. I drink water,
Yep.
which we'll get into that because that was very important this morning when I woke up and thought, Vanessa says drink 30 ounces of water in the morning. So I better do that right now
Yeah.
because I know it's a good idea. But the point being that we have hunger cues and we have social cues,
Mm.
and our social cues tell us quite often, well, it's the morning, I got to eat breakfast. Well, it's lunchtime, I should eat lunch. Well, it's dinner time, I guess I eat dinner now. And not listening to, am I actually hungry? Is this what my body is craving? And you're big on cravings. What are you craving? Let's talk about that. Can you give me like some idea of how you then tailor something to someone once you know
Sure.
their lifestyle and figure out what foods will work and not, because it's not the same?
So one of the first things to figure out is, do you actually know if you're hungry or not? It's such an interesting concept. Most people have no clue. They eat at certain times of day, like you said, they eat with other people. It's whatever, right? So the first thing to do is to figure that out. So we figure out, are you actually hungry? Are you dehydrated? What is it? And most people don't have no clue. What does hunger really feel like? Do you have a clue? I can tell you, after I run 10 miles, I'm still not hungry. So why is that? Right? Because I got enough body fat. It's not a big deal. But I can tell you, at the end of the evening, after seeing a bunch of clients and my whole day, I'm starving, and I know exactly what that feels like. So that's the first thing, is to figure that out, and then figure out what your timetable is when you actually are hungry in the daytime. And for many clients, it's not, they don't need to eat breakfast. Some don't need to eat dinner, right? I work all day. I just eat dinner because my wife makes dinner, right? Well, great. Guess what? Eat a very little tiny amount so that you can participate in dinner with your wife and kids, but don't make a big deal of it. Don't say, oh gosh, I'm only going to have half of that, honey. Just only have half without mentioning it. You don't need to talk about it to other people. Guess what? Most people really don't care about you. They don't, right? They're not watching you and everything you do.
Right.
Just go ahead and do it. So yeah, so I figure out where they feel hungry and when they don't, and what they crave. So if you're telling me all the time that you're craving sugar, we got to deal with that big time, right? Because that's a hard addiction to break. And we all have that. So whether it
It's
be to
common.
alcohol, to cake, it's very, very common. And we got to figure that out, right? So if we're going to do that, so it's the sweetness you crave. Is it the actual adrenaline rush from sugar? What is it? And then we can figure out how to modify that. So if you have a sugar craving, let's say you like to eat a half a pound of Skittles a day, right? You're that guy at the desk, you're just putting Skittles in your mouth. So if we do that with blueberries instead, what happens to you? And if you say it does not chewy enough, okay, fine. How about if we do it with something that's dried, maybe even some raisins with those blueberries, because that's a snacking feeling, right? And getting you some sugar. And there's no way you can eat as many raisins and blueberries to do the same calories and the damage to your teeth that those Skittles did, right?
Yeah.
So if we can switch that up a little bit, right? How can we do that so that you're still getting that mental feeling of snacking? And is it actually a sugar addiction, or is it that hand mouth thing that so many people need, right? So we got to figure that out. And we do it by trial and error to figure out what makes you feel good and what makes it work for you.
Which is why this is a process. It's not an overnight fix. And
Right.
it's funny you mentioned this. I mean, the sugar thing has always been big for me, and I've eliminated it for the most part. I don't even know the last time it snuck into my diet. And I say sneak in, meaning I let it, right? But I love the blueberry thing. And what I noticed was I get more of that mouth satisfaction, let's say,
Yep.
when I have frozen blueberries. It's a little
Yep.
tougher. It's like you bite into
Yep.
it. And so like that's become my snack of choice. Like I want
Yep.
like a
Yep.
dessert. I just throw blueberries in a small bowl and I'm just like eating it. And I'm like, oh, this is good. Like I
Yep.
like that feeling. And everyone's got to find that thing. I totally get that. Now, water. I mentioned it
Yes.
before. It's a big theme in your book. I have always, well, not always, but in my weight loss journey, I've understood the importance of water, but I often forget it too. I'll have a day where I'm like, did I drink enough water? Probably not. You go into this as sometimes the very first step when it comes to their dietary change for a client is we need you to drink water. Tell us about what that is. What do you tell them to do in terms of water and why?
So every morning, this is like a religion to me. You drink 30 ounces of water when you first get up in the morning, before you do anything else, before that cup of coffee, before that tea. It's 30 ounces of water, period. There's no questions about it. And again, at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, it's 30 ounces of water again. Now, of course, that afternoon might change a little bit depending on your work situation and when you need to use a restroom. So much of our lack of sleep, so much of our headaches, so much of our sugar cravings are caused by dehydration. So people don't realize it. And getting people to drink this much water is painful to almost every client when they start, right? And this isn't the water that you're drinking through the day. This isn't the water that you're drinking because you just exercised and you sweated a lot. That's not it. This is just 30 in the morning and 30 in the afternoon, and it'll change you. It is the quickest fix for hunger pains, for sugar cravings, and it clears up your skin tremendously. And I think that is shocking to everybody. And this is the first phase where they see a change in themselves in 3 weeks. And I think it takes about 3 weeks for them to accept this, because it's almost nauseating in the beginning to drink this much water if you've never drank water. Now, I used to be really, really nice to people and say, okay, just drink 5 or 6 ounces. It's okay with me. I'm not anymore. Basically, if you tell me I can't drink that much water, I hate water, then I tell you this isn't going to work. Because if you are 70, 80 pounds overweight and drinking 60 ounces of water is your breaking point, I can't help you.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. So
The
there you go.
the water intake I've found is the dehydration that you mentioned for sure.
Mhm.
And I definitely think that sometimes that's goes back to the hunger cue thing. Are we hungry? Or are
Mhm.
we just thirsty? Are we dehydrated? And sometimes just drinking that water lets you know, like, oh, I'm not that hungry now. And that's an important lesson. Do you let them, or I shouldn't say let them, but suggest to them plain water? Can they put electrolytes in their water? Like, is that okay? Is putting lemon or lime for flavoring okay for water consumption? Does it matter?
Sure, anything's fine. I'm okay with all of that. I just don't want coffee or tea to be your substitute, because I don't want caffeine to be the substitute. So electrolyte mixes without caffeine are fine. But boy, we use a lot of caffeine in our world. And so I don't want it to be a stimulant to the brain. I actually want it to be the opposite. One of the things people don't realize is how often they have headaches, low grade headaches from dehydration. Very common for people to tell me, I kind of wake up all the time with a headache. And I go, well, yeah, because you're dehydrated. You just lost a pint of water while you were sleeping, and you probably went to bed dehydrated. So let's see if we can change that and see how you feel, which might make you sleep better, which sleep is hard for almost 80% of my clients, including myself. It has to be a priority. If you do not sleep, you do not lose weight, period, because your body is always in stress.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was just going to ask you is being in a stressful state. That has to be something that we figure out as well, right? Because I understand the way I understand it is when you're very stressed, your cortisol levels are higher, it's harder to burn fat when you're in that state. So that's part of what you're doing with clients, right? You're trying to work through how do you break through those stressful moments so that you're not so stressed. I mean, you tell everyone to wear a heart rate monitor so you see
Yeah,
what's going on, right? That's
right,
important.
right. Yeah, stress is really interesting because it can be sneaking up on you, and then that constant state of agitation. I run lots of businesses. I have lots of employees. They all stress me out. And there are days where I got to say, okay, just stop, because I can't think when I'm stressed, right? I can't make a great decision when I've got 19 things happening in my brain. And so I've got to eliminate the stress. Now, obviously you want some stress in your life, or your life would be incredibly boring. But how do you manage it and not allow it to physically overtake you? And how do you deal with that stress? Am I just taking a 2-minute meditation? Am I taking a 10-minute walk? How do I stop the stress and not use alcohol and food to fix the stress either?
Yeah, that's a big shift for a lot of people. I think what you're talking about here and anyone listening is that you're putting together all these different building blocks to this obesity success
Mhm.
defined by something sustainable, not a quick fix where
Mhm.
you just lose 60 pounds. I'm intrigued by the idea that diets are different for different people and that you encourage that. And I just want to know, when we talk about all this, we're talking about food, we're talking about relationships with food. That comes up on this podcast a lot. What's your relationship with food? I had an unhealthy relationship with food. How do we repair that? How do we make food work for us instead of us just overdoing it and not being healthy?
First thing is to be conscious of it. And I think that's really difficult, is to say, okay, why am I eating what I'm eating today? Is it by eating it for a mental fix, or is it physically going to help me tomorrow do the things that I want to do? Because our bodies have to digest this. We are machines, right? So if I'm going to go run 10 miles tomorrow and I drank 3 bourbons and had 2 apple fritters from Winchell's Donuts, is that going to help me run 10 miles tomorrow? No, it's not, right? So I have to figure out, what am I using food for? Change the conversation with food, make food work for you, and realize that your body is a machine. You are not going to go throw mud in your gas tank and expect that car to go down the road. Why do you do it to your body? Right? So that's the big change. Now, I'm not asking you to do this 24/7. I'm asking you to do this for 3 or 4 seconds before you eat that apple fritter. Is it worth it to you? And most of the time you'll say, no, it's not really what I want to be, what I want to do, who I want to be, where I want to go tomorrow. And all of us have eaten to excess and felt sick the next day. Every one of us, right? So try not to do that. That's just a quarter of a second of a thought process will change your attitude about food.
Well, that was your thing. 23 is your big number. You take 23
Yeah.
seconds in your mind to kind of count it out. And that's your suggestion to all of us is, can you take 10 seconds at least to just think about what you're doing? And I think that's important. I think that's a good distressing mechanism too, is to sort of assess what's going on instead of just reacting all the time. We live in a society where we react to everything. And a lot of times that's when we make mistakes, we make bad decisions, poor food choices, and so on and so forth. Uh, how I just want to ask you before we let you go. You've been able to work with a lot of people. You get to know them intimately because they're telling you stuff that they wouldn't even tell their doctor, maybe.
Right.
And you see them changing. Some fails, some succeed, many succeed. How has that changed you? How has that affected you watching that happen?
I don't think I really realized how much pain people are in. I mean, I think that we meet people in our lives and we're very superficial with people we work with, or even people that we're having relationships with. I had a woman I've had for years. Her parents were visiting for a couple of months. And so she says, my dad wants to work out with you. You have time? Yeah. Her dad was on antidepressants. He'd had lots of issues. She had no idea, right? We try to look good, right? And I'm a big person about saying to people, I don't feel good today. I'm depressed. I'm going to be an asshole in your workout. Too bad. Deal with me, right? And they laugh, right? But I'm 100% honest in who and what I am and what I feel. And I want people to feel that. And I think this is such an interesting thing that we've become this, how good do I look? Do I look like I'm put together? No, I have days where every piece of my business is falling apart. And I'm just like, I want to go out in the backyard and scream, which I do occasionally. And it's okay. It's okay to say that you're not okay and move from there and then try to be better, right? I love it when a client comes in after a weekend and says, guess what I did this weekend? And I go, okay, let's just talk about one thing. Was it worth it? And if you say, I so enjoyed this 1 pound steak I had at this stupid steakhouse, but yeah, I had an upset stomach the next day, we can laugh about it and move forward, right? We all have pain. We all do things we know we shouldn't. Let's just accept it and move forward.
Yeah, I can't agree with that anymore. That's very good advice. And it's about being honest with yourself. I think when we do that, I think as a basis, when we at least accept what is happening or accept the reality of what we've been
Mhm.
doing to ourselves, then we can look at how do we fix those things. And I think that's something that you bring out very clearly in your book. Your book is called It's Your Body, Move It, Love It, Live. And I definitely think that people should be reading this. It really does detail a lot of the problems that so many of us suffer through obesity. Now, Vanessa, before I let you go, I just want a chance for anyone who maybe wants to message you, reach out to you, or look at your services. How can they go about doing that?
So fitness-23.com is my main website, which you can get to all of my websites. I have a personal training studio in San Jose, California. I also have a kickboxing, boxing gym in Las Vegas. I have a nonprofit. You can buy the book from there. You can see the links to the book. You can message me at any time. I have a YouTube channel, which is, Train with V, Fitness 23, anywhere. And I don't care that you're paying me or not. If you have a question for me, I have answered every email I get. And, there are videos to watch for free. If you can't afford a personal trainer, find just something that you can kind of latch onto. And I've never not helped somebody. I just think that if we all help each other, when I help you, I feel better about myself, regardless if you're paying me or not. So I think that we have to kind of get to that in society so we don't all hate each other anymore. So often we criticize people to make ourselves feel better, and it doesn't work. Helping people makes yourself feel better, not criticizing.
And that's what you've been doing. You've been helping people,
Yeah.
and look at you. I mean, it's you're fit as a fiddle. I see muscles right now when you moved your arms.
I
And
know, it's crazy.
you said before you were 55. I don't
Yep.
see that at all. I'm
55.
like, oh, this
Yeah.
woman's in her 30s. So good for you. Thank you for sharing your story, and we'll hopefully talk to you again in the future.
Thanks, Daniel. I would love that. That was so great. Thank you so much.